tattoo artists and body pissers of Reddit. What is the most uncomfortable job you have had to do? NSW. An old roommate did tattoos and piercings. I get home from work, walk into the kitchen, and see this dude spread eagle laying on the counter getting his dong pierced by my roommate. Before I say anything, my roommate says they wouldn't let us do it at the shop, and the guy getting his dong pierced looks at me and says sup, grabbed a beer from the fridge and watched the magic happen. My early years were freaking crazy. I had a guys come in once who wanted this tattoo of an angel girl and devil girl making out and fingering each other. Not that weird, but I go to stencil it on his back and he has like 4 other designs that are similar graphic sex acts. Okay, maybe the guy is a freak, no biggie. So as I'm doing the tattoo, some show is on that's documenting life inside a women's prison. He starts talking about how he would love to be a guard at one of those facilities and how much fun it would be. This goes on for some time, just talking about how hot girls during the commercials are and how he'd love to frick them. Just no sense of self-awareness and how fricked up he sounds to me. Then I realize at this point that this dude is probably a rapist or at least a sex offender in the making. And I feel like doing this tattoo is only helping to usher him on his quest to ruin lives and be a shitbag. I don't know if that was actually the case or not, but I felt grimy as frick afterwards. TL. DR. Tattooed pee on a probable rapist. I saw a waitress get her nipples pierced at a bar in Milwaukee years ago. Everyone was gathered around, wincing. I said to a girl next to me, "Jesus, that's gotta hurt." She immediately whipped the neck of her sweater down, exposing her pierced E, and said, "Nah, it's not too bad." I have one nipple pierced, one for the boys who like piercings and a nipple for the ones that don't, because I am a giver like that, and I didn't even feel it when it was done. I make custom body jewelry for a living. One of things I make are custom chastity devices. I've had to measure gentlemen for devices and other erotic play jewelry many times. Not to mention call customers and talk to them for upwards of an hour multiple times in the process of making their jewelry. The customers are always very nice. As far as it being awkward or uncomfortable, I guess I'm just desensitized at this point. I'd be happy to provide proof if desired. Obviously I cannot provide pictures of clients, but I can provide pictures of what I make. PS Hi CJ. I'm really intrigued to know what you make. Show me please. My ex-husband is a tattoo artist. He had this older lady that would regularly come in and get work done. She eventually asked for the hip bone panty line tattoo, roses and guns, I think. I got the privilege of being in the room while ex-hubby did the tat. Every time Held touch her with the gun, she would immediately tense up and then let out a huge queef as she was untensing. Good buddy of mine got a gnome laying in a sexy pose on his taint. The phrase "he ain't no gnome like a taint gnome" has been thrown around quite liberally. I used to work with this guy who wanted to be a tattoo artist so bad, but he was horrible at it. He had his own gun and ink and would get off work and tattoo himself at home. His arms were covered with these incredibly crappy, not at all straight line stars, clovers, other little crappy symbols like that. Then he'd come into work and show them off and make fun of me because I never paid less than $300 for a tattoo. It was always awkward and uncomfortable for me. When you tattoo people, you have to shave the area. I had this big fat guy come in for a back piece, so in the middle of me shaving another man's back, I quoted the Family Guy line where Peter tells Meg, "Shave a man's back, Meg, and he'll poo like a walrus." Everyone in the shop frickin' lost it. This is one reason I'm hesitant to get any tattoos. I'm a hairy guy. I doubt it'll look any good either having a hairless patch for a tattoo or having it half covered in a rug. I don't really have anything against fat people, but I think fellow tattoo artists know where I'm coming from. Sometimes people want tattoos over some roles. This is challenging because you kinda need to stretch the skin and it doesn't really look that great when the skin reverts back to the roll. Hard to explain, but imagine trying to tattoo over someone's fat rolls. It's hard to explain that to the customer without being blunt, which may pee them off. If you just do it and they realize later how crappy it can look, they get pee off. Tattooing fat people in certain places sucks. Long story short, I tattooed a really fat chick on her back. She didn't like how it kinda got distorted. I told her if she lost weight it would straighten out and look good. She wanted a refund. As a fat chick, that seems pretty obvious. tattooer for a couple of years and this happens far too much. I'll be tattooing someone's forearm, which means my face is usually right by their hand. This is awkward enough being a female and experiencing at least one boob brush, usually accidental, per forearm tattoo. But something you wouldn't think about until it happens is the fish fingers. I've smelled so many vaginas on people's fingers, and it's just the oddest thing to smell out of context. Here I am in a professional setting, working with my client, and I suddenly know what they were doing an hour before, and even worse, that they didn't wash their hands afterwards. How many other people's love juices have I touched unknowingly, not having gotten a whiff of their fingers? I'm a female tattoo artist. For a bit of context, I was working on a client one night in a private space, just myself and him in the room. He was that stereotypical kind of socially awkward dude who collects the kind of things he considers cool as part of his persona. In his particular case, he was the weekend warrior Harley biker who wore a leather eye patch even though both his eyes functioned just fine. He was difficult in the design stage as I was cutting together the different elements of the Harley skull with wings logo that he wanted. But some clients can be nitpicky and you get through it. What really made me uncomfortable was when he began waxing on about how he was born in the wrong century and that he wished he lived in an age where he could rape and pillage at will. Conversation pretty much came to a halt at that point and I tried to wrap it up as soon as possible. Design wise, the one I've always felt the most squicky about doing was a woman who wanted her crappy husband's initials done in the form of a brand mark and made to look freshly burned on her butt cheek. I tried talking her out of it initially, but when he cracked a joke about getting their baby tattooed when I was in the other room and she said she would punch me in the face if I did. As if I would tattoo a freaking baby. Seriously. I felt a bit less bad about letting her make her stupid decision. What really made me uncomfortable was when he began waxing on about how he was born in the wrong century and that he wished he lived in an age where he could rape and pillage at will. Conversation pretty much came to a halt at that point and I tried to wrap it up as soon as possible. I feel like that is when you begin to think try anything and I stab you in the trachea with this needle. Dated a body pisser. Used to help when I could cause she ran the shop alone. Was afraid of being robbed I think. Anyway, she was giving a girl a tongue piercing and we had gone through the normal stuff. Do you have seizures? Heart problems? Allergic to metals or latex? Her dad blah blah blah. Well, the moment she puts the needle through this girl's tongue she has a full-on seizure. My GF is panicking. Mom, I think, and friends are panicking. I'm trying to remain calm and think of what the frick to do. Mom faints and hits her head on a counter, bleeding everywhere. I tell my GF to deal with that. I take my belt off and wrap it around this girl to keep her arms at her sides. I make her friend hold it tight. I manage to steady her head and quickly pull out the needle. Left the clamps there cause frick that noise. After she stops and comes to, she tells us this has happened before at a place down the street. I was 2-3 hour sessions into my back piece on a snowy Colorado Saturday when a large biker walked into the otherwise deserted shop. Larry, my tattoo artist, hollers at him from the back to take a look around and pop his head in with any questions. After a few minutes, biker Bob comes into the room, takes one look at my blood and ink smeared in process back and proceeds to pass out. All 400+ pounds of him. Larry hops up, tries to revive him while I try to help while also trying to keep my lady bits covered up. After a few minutes Bob comes to, sits up and comes back into reality. All he said before leaving was women, dang, tough B, and then he walked out while we broke out into hysterical laughter. I remember seeing a picture of an anal piercing somewhere but I can't recall where it was. Anyway, professionals, what are your thoughts on that? Also, don't Google anal piercing. Very few things that come up by Google pictures have something to do with that. I googled it before I even finished reading your post. Not me, but a very good friend runs a body mod shop. They've done all sorts of weird things, putting all sorts of things in people, but the story she always tells is about this woman in her late 40s who very obviously got off on having her crotch tattooed. Apparently it's fairly common for people to enjoy the sensations around their privates, but this woman was demanding the most detailed design done over her entire pubic region, which took several long appointments of her laying there being ultra creepy as my friend had to pull and tug her saggy skin so she could work on it. The whole time the woman was moaning and groaning and secreting all sorts of foamy fluids. Apparently from the state of things it was pretty obvious genital pain was a fetish of this lady. Covered in scars and deformities, my friend described it as looking like a bulldog's bonce. There was one time when I was set to pierce this 16-year-old girl's nipple, legal where I was at the time, and when I pierced it she moaned, and her mom was in the room and shot me daggers with her looks, as if it were my fault. Not an artist or pisser, but I used to work at a store that sells body jewelry. I had an old man come up to me asking for a Tuga hoop for his Prince Albert. For those who don't know, dong piercing. I went to show him the options. He insisted on showing me pics on his cell phone of the piercing. I was like, no, I understand what we're talking about. I don't need to see. But he persisted and shoved his phone in my face. I looked quickly and was like yep, knew it. Anyway, over here. But he's freaking scrolling through like 8 different pics of his old man dong. So yeah, that was uncomfortable. He was an exhibitionist and you have every right to refuse to look. Even if you have to cause a scene, you don't need to take that kind of crap. I tattooed a rose on a 50-year-old lady's butt crack. She insisted that the stem disappear into her crack. After adding length to it twice because it still wasn't long enough, I straight asked her, do you just want it in your butthole? She looked back over her shoulder at me and said yes please. I had her bend over the chair and ran the stem right into her butt lips. It was awkward to say the least. I've also had people pass out and pee themselves. My friend had a lady in white shorts diarrhea herself when she fainted. All kinds of crap. I freaking love my job. I even met my wife there. A friend of mine, a dude, gave another dude a Prince Albert. The guy getting the piercing came on my friend's hand immediately after getting the metal rod put in his member. My friend said that was his first and last Prince Albert. I've had to clean out my fair share of nasty belly buttons before piercing. You'll be amazed at how many people don't clean their belly button. I'm talking like nasty, dried up, black yellow chunks of only God knows what. Clean your navel, people. Also, please shower before coming in and getting something done below the belt. We all stink. We all know it. My face has to be right there. Ah, the littlest ecosystem. So precious, so fragile. My brother is a tattoo artist and on one of his first days of being an apprentice, a 50-year-old typical looking suburban man walks in asking what type of dragons they can do. He picks his favorite and my brother's trainer asks where he wants it to go. The guy, straight-faced as frick, says tattoo it on my dong. I want the head on my dong and the wings and the chest on my nuts. Some 5 or 6 hours later the guy wakes up from being passed out cuss of the pain with a red dragon tattooed on his nut and dong. This happened when I was an apprentice. Some woman came in and wanted heart is everything in the Disney font. The tattoo was huge and on her entire side. She had it printed out, and my artist had stenciled it and I had prepped the station. Well, he was tattooing her and I realized that everything was spelled incorrectly. He hadn't gotten to it yet, so I frantically told him that he needed to go smoke a cigarette with me. After a great deal of nagging, he went out to smoke with me and was pretty pee off about it. I told him about the incorrect spelling and he basically shat bricks. We went in and talked to this woman about it, and even after explaining that it was spelled incorrectly, she insisted that was how it had to be. I was in a shop getting a tattoo. The pisser at the shop had this younger guy in who had an earring ripped out of his ear in a fight. The kid had the bright idea to cut an earlobe on that ear as he didn't have lobes and cut away the scar. The pisser obliged and my tattoo artist buddy and I watching this guy move this scalpel all side pretty deep trying to cut this kid's ear off. Finally the guy is done and they are trying to bandage him up. The bleeding won't stop. They have this kid lying in a bed complaining. He starts getting a bit pale and losing a crap ton of blood. Nobody want to call an ambulance, that would be it for that shop. So this equally bright pisser gets the idea to take some gauze, soak it in alcohol, and proceed to try to cauterize it with open flame. The kid is laying there jerking around like a chicken and myself and everybody are ready to call an ambulance. The kid is conscious and it wasn't enough blood to life threatening. Finally, they get a hold of some body modification chick with a cauterizing pen to come over and close it. All this smoke puffs up from this guy's ear. Smelled like barbecue a bit. And off he went, all happy. I crap you not, this happened over the course of about 4 hours. Not an artist but a friend of mine on an exchange in South Africa got a Drunken tattoo. I spoke to him the next morning when he was insanely hungover. Told me the story of his crazy night and explained he woke up with titties in his mouth. Turns out he got the word titties tattooed on his inner bottom lip while blackout drunk. I asked the guy who was tattooing me the same question. He said he tattooed a fly on this guy's penis and the weeks following his appointment the guy would pop his head in and say he doubled his money and then would leave again. Finally the tattoo artist stopped him and asked what he meant. Turns out he would be sitting at the bar and would make bets with people who didn't believe he had a fly tattooed on his dong. He'd win every time and doubled the money it took him to get the thing in the first place with each bet. I've been a pisser for almost 6 years now. There is one story that comes to mind. There was a large woman who came in and wanted 2 clitoral hood piercings. Very large, over 350 pounds easily. She explained she had one vertical one already and wanted 2 on either side. So I set up and bring her back. She brings along her 3 friends for support. When she lays on the table, she can't hold her legs open so 2 of her friends grab a leg to hold them apart. And I get my first look at the area. I see she already has 5 rings down her labia on each side. Look like a darn bear trap. As my gaze wanders up, I see her fupa is hanging down so far it's covering her hood. So I'm trying to use the edge of my glove to lift her fupa so I can at least see what I'm trying to do and her third friend leans over and asks if I'd like her to hold up the fupa. I held back my mix of laughter and vomit and gladly accepted the help. Probably the most uncomfortable experience besides the handful of girls who smelled like they'd been smuggling sardines in their vaginas for weeks. It really is a great job. I don't know what fupa means and I'm sure as heck not going to ask. Gonna be that guy and say not an artist but my friend is. He was asked to do a swastika and a paramilitary tattoo design. Northern Ireland. Was uncomfortable and said no. He also got uneasy putting the 666 in the Thrasher logo on a friend of mine. Worked on a guy in this house in West Philly. I work in shops too so chill out. Guy is black. I'm guessing the guy is about 6'3", 235 pounds. Let's just say he's Terry Crews. For reference, me equals 5'8", 165 pounds white kid. His GF gives him something. I can't tell what it is. I'm working. So anyway, I'm finishing up on the piece and so comes the part where the customer gets up and checks it out. The guy just kinda hangs out and sits there breathing. His girl checks on him, asks him about this and that. Non-responsive. Finally brings him up to his feet and we all go to check out the piece in the bathroom mirror. Along the way, someone mentioned something about angel dust. So it dawns on me this guy was on PCP. For those who are uninformed, I'm sure there are some videos somewhere of some avid PCP fans. So he stands in front of the mirror and she's wiping the sweat off him as he's rocking back and forth towering over us both. She asks him how he likes the tattoo. He says I don't see it. Now I'll be honest, the dude was pretty dark, but there was just no way you can't see a fresh black tattoo on your upper arm. Standing in front of the bathroom mirror, we stand there for a good minute pointing at the tattoo, trying to talk to him and explain what was going on. He says again I don't see it. At this point he starts getting agitated and she probably figured the situation wasn't getting much nicer or rational for that matter. I did a pretty decent job if I must say, nothing wrong with it. Just a name and a winged heart. From Flash. A memorial piece for his friend. I did the name on a piece before it, so no way I spelled it wrong. This dude was just tripping out. She hands me the money from his clenched, sweaty hand and I pack up my wares and got the heck out of that place, despite a few customers waiting for tats. Never did another house party after that. Former pisser here. An older, rather smelly area army vet who wore kilts commando style came in to have his PA, Prince Albert, stretched from a 2 to a 0. He moaned in enjoyment while I did it. I wanted to vomit from smell and his excitement. Typo. Tattoo artist here. Awkward story here as well. I tattooed a woman's outer labia once. Already it wasn't the best looking or best smelling. Anyways, she's in stirrups. I'm dead center and while the tattoo is happening, people tend to use a bit of plasma. Needless to say, it can make the area slippery. Long story short, my client gets finger banged because my fingers slipped while I was attempting to stretch the skin properly. I'm no tattoo artist, but one time a tattoo artist walked into a bar and just yelled who can draw, and half-heartedly raised my hand and shrugged out a yeah I guess I can, and the guy says alright, come with me then. So next thing I know I follow this dude to a party, cracks open a few beers, asked if I ever tatted someone before and I said no, and he said well you're about to. So we partied and got drunk, then he had me cover up a gang tattoo with a grenade after my whole 5-minute crash course into tattooing. That's actually a pretty cool story. I asked my tattoo artist and he said 2 dudes requested a portrait of Michael Bolton dressed as Captain Jack Sparrow on their butt cheeks. He said he charged them extra for having to shave their asses. Totally late, but whatever. Was in a shop flipping through the book Tattoos and Piercings the guy had done in the past. Turned the page and staring at me is a dong with 6 barbells and 2 hoops in it. I say something out loud about it and the guy says that's my buddy, and says my cousin's freaking name. Our last name is very rare, so there is no way it was someone else. This is gonna get buried, but when I was getting a tattoo recently my artist said that he had recently had a guy come in asking for a full sleeve of Down syndrome children. The artist had a mentally disabled sister and nearly beat the crap out of him. The pisser that did my eyebrow piercing told me about this lady who was offended she wouldn't pierce her 16-year-old daughter's nipples. I once had to tattoo a Chippendales dancer. Believe it or not, they actually have a tattoo policy. The dancers are allowed to have tattoos but are not allowed to get new visible tattoos once employed. This guy needed a cover-up of an ex-girlfriend's name, not a big problem, except I wasn't the one who quoted the price, my boss did that. So for $60 he got a small addition to an existing tattoo and a new girl's name. I never understand this logic in a place that can be hidden by his work attire. So I spent about half an hour with this male dancer's balls against the back of my hand for $30 take home. And to top it off I think he tipped about $5. I guess they can't all be good days. I actually just got synced today and asked my artist this question. His answer: a 17-year-old kid wanted to get frick pigs and kill cops on his hands. Where we are, that statement couldn't be more out of place. Naturally the artist refused as it reflects poorly on him and the shop. If the kid spread it around him, the kid would never get a job with that, let alone making himself a target to be hassled by the cops even more. That and he tried to pay in quarters. Tattoo artist and longtime Reddit lurker. I actually made an account just to comment this. I would have to say my weirdest situation ever would be, I come from a pretty small town. Lots of crappy tattoos. Tribal and Ducks Unlimited symbols. No joke. Anyway, I had once been requested to do 2 similar Browning symbols. For a man and a female. One with a bow and one original, with scripture around it. I unfortunately can't remember the exact passage, but it was basically something off-putting about the woman's bosom. Anyway, as I was doing the woman's tattoo, on her inner hip, V area, her boyfriend or husband, whatever, was hovering over me the whole time, remarking on how hot it was for me to have been touching her there. Ugh. It was so creepy and Westboro Baptist Church like. Haha. I worked at a pharmacy as a lab technician and a 13-year-old girl and her dad come over to bring some prescriptions. Looking at my earrings, he asked where I got my ears pierced. I went to Hygiene, an equivalent to Claire's, and had such a bad experience with terrible infections that I begged the father to bring his daughter to a professional piercer, where everything is proper and well done. He said he was too scared to bring his daughter to this kind of place, didn't trust these kinds of people and preferred Claire's. I was really tempted to unprofessionally answer, "Why the frick do you ask for my opinion if you don't give a crap?" There's a good memoir called Tattoo Machine where the writer, Jeff Johnson, relates once an obese woman walked into his shop and she wanted a portrait of her childhood self tattooed on her stomach, without a mouth, and that's the creepiest one that he left in. He admits leaving one out before telling that one. That sounds like a really creepy way of expressing regret for her weight. Late to the party but might as well pitch in. I'm a tattoo artist and I've had a client getting her knee tattooed ask me if she could masturbate to help with the pain. Cute too. Had me confused on the ethics and morals of what I should do about that. The other story revolves around a cute lesbian girl getting something on her pelvic area, which ended in a full-on orgasm from the pain vibration of the machine. She was embarrassed a guy achieved that. I was embarrassed it wasn't intentional. Third and last is the assortment of Pinterest tattoos. We made a pool at my shop to see who could make the most stereotypical tattoos in a week, like the birds flying away from a feather, etc. Turns out that number is around 46. 21 years in the biz. Many crazy stories, but this one is the shortest. BC, I'm on mobile. Middle-aged dude comes in and wants a picture of his wife tattooed on his arm. I ask for a picture and he hands me a photo from the early 80s. She has huge hair, giving the finger, smoking a joint, with her legs spread and completely naked. Big ole bush too. He also had his 10 and 12 years old sons with him. I was getting a tattoo at my mate's shop. Normal looking guy walks in and puts a down payment, like $100, on 7 swastikas on his face. Apparently he didn't come back for the appointment, which my friend was pretty stoked about. Free $100. Guy who did some of my work told me about getting us to do something similar, and obviously not wanting to do it. His solution was just to charge an insanely high rate for racist, ignorant, really crappy ideas, like $500 for a tiny thing. The last time this was posted, a guy told the story of a clit piercing. A girl and her boyfriend walked into his shop and inquired about it, went outside to talk about it and came back with her full of cream pee. When the guy running the shop questioned them why the heck they decided to have sex right before she got the piercing, they claimed that they figured they wouldn't be able to have sex for a while, so they made up for it right then and there. She didn't get the piercing. Another story from the same thread involved a guy tattooing some ironic word around a woman's anus. Story is from a friend of a friend who knew a tattoo artist. A middle-aged man wanted a clown face on his butt with his hands up, doing the jazz hands. Mouth had to be the rectum, of course. When asked why he wanted the clown butt, the guy said he liked to take dumps in the forest and it happened often that random people would walk by. He thought it would be less scary and more funny if people saw a clown instead of his butt. Body pisser here. I had 2 men come into my studio one day. One was in his 60s, the other in his 30s. And they were both looking at jewelry for Prince Albert piercing, and the younger of the two kept referring to the older one as daddy. Is that the same as you have daddy? It was a tad creepy, but I figured whatever. To each their own. The men come back a week later and the younger one has booked in to have his Prince Albert done. I tell this story to the girl on counter with me, and as tactless as she was, just blurts out, "Is that your dad?" The older guy goes bright red and starts mumbling, "Nah, friend" or something. So anyway, we go into the studio and I start to prep. I tell the guy to take his pants off and to give the area a clean etc, and when he drops his pants he's wearing ladies' fishnet underwear. Again super creeped out. Start marking up for the PA. Pull this guy's foreskin back and I swear I've never seen something more dirty in my life. It was like no one ever showed this guy how to wash his dong. To top it off, during the whole procedure I had a perfect view of this guy's butthole. Like full dot, and it was obvious he didn't know how to clean this either. If I was going to be a pisser, I'd have to have a shower installed and make it mandatory for genital piercings. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.